Hey guys, so usually I am kind of reserved and a little bit shy and maybe not myself when I film content. In this case, it is 3:20 in the morning and I have been through this many zins in the past 40 hours and I'm slowly decaying, but in a really beautiful way because all of that sacrifice has yielded something pretty insane. So I sat down and I basically rebuilt Calendly, at least the core features of Calendly. And I did it over the course of, what do we have here? 51 hours. That's how long it took me. During those 51 hours, I was not simply using Cursor to push code as someone who isn't technical, but I was also running our other businesses. So we run a consulting business. That's our bread and butter. We take on clients and we help them make money by building workflows, kind of like the one that we are about to walk through. And then we also basically have created this talent pipeline wherein, in order to solve for our staffing shortcomings, we will take on people and mentor them and then help them close deals. And it's this very incestuous thing. And all the while, we are validating product market fit on more scalable solutions by treating our clients' projects like these kind of quasi sandboxes. It's really sick. And if I'm not making any sense right now, and it turns out that actually I had an aneurysm and I'm just stammering incoherently, that would actually track based on how I've treated my body over the course of the past week. But honestly, there's just not time to sleep. There is so much money to be made. And like I said, there are basically three ways to make money in this ecosystem, at least the way that we attack it. So we'll take on clients and we'll build workflows for them. We will help other people do that, and then often we'll internalize them. And then we will also build products that can accommodate a little bit more scale. With that context, I want to take you through this timeline and show you how I went from looking for a Calendly alternative to sitting down and consuming too much nicotine and just building my own. And by the way, this isn't your grandma's half-baked Replit project that she kind of stood up but then couldn't figure out how to deploy. What we do is build real solutions for real businesses, and I will explain that more at the end of this video. I will give you the concrete thing that allows us to make a ton of money building stuff like this for different businesses as someone who isn't technical. And now would be an appropriate time in this video for me to share a screenshot of some social proof or a big number from Stripe, but who cares about any of that? I'm sure what you guys want to see is the actual product. So we can come in here. I titled this calendar YouTube demo because I am really out here like that. And we're just going to go ahead and put in our name. We will use Joshy Speed, and we'll just pop in a random phone number, which we're not validating, because for my purposes, I don't need to have a ton of bells and whistles. At some point, I'll stand up a way to validate a phone number. Anyway, so what you just saw is the contact stage of this calendar. And we're just going to click through some of the different questions before we're able to schedule. And we can see here, what is this? Have you ever shilled Go High Level in a quasi pyramid scheme type format? No, because I have free will and I like solving problems. Oh, look at that. We're qualified. Okay. So once we go through the contact us stage, then we are able to schedule and book a call. And if we come over here and click confirm, bang, we just booked a call on my Google Calendar. And if you need proof, I just got an email from mail delivery subsystem that says joshyspeed@example.com was not found. Okay, now let's get into it. I'm going to walk you through the timeline. I'm going to explain to you why I built this, and then we are going to break down each incremental step, and I am going to show you exactly how I built this so that you can replicate it, or you can go build your own products that you can offer to clients or use as lead magnets, because I recommend not offering anything to clients and instead building around their needs, because that's a way more compelling value proposition. Regardless, let's just take it one step at a time. Super quick break from the broadcast for a fast plug. If you're serious about starting or scaling your AI automation agency, we just opened up a couple of slots for our new one-to-one mentorship program. So this is where you'll get hands-on help from me and the team to build, sell, and deliver automation services that actually make money. And so if that sounds like something you might be interested in, or you just want to see the tool in action, I dropped the link to this page down below. and you can click through and book a call with us. We'll break down everything, but you can also interact with the component itself, which I thought would be kind of fun. So anyway, the spots tend to go pretty fast just because we take on so few people. So if you are interested, this is a great opportunity. And if not, well, then let's get back to the show. So our business has been growing, but it's been growing in this very staggered way where we will take on a client and then we'll take on another client and then another one, and then we'll get super busy, and then we'll be building frenetically, and then we will figure out how to operationalize slightly, and we'll establish a new floor and rinse and repeat. And then we started taking on other agencies or people who wanted to start agencies and mentoring them. And it basically was this very consistent cyclical pattern that we were stuck in. And as a result, we never really bothered to systemize the way that we were going about acquiring new clients or mentees, in large part because every time that we would stop taking people on, there was this big bottleneck. And when we were ready to take people back on, they would kind of come in droves. That being said, we never have, and I don't anticipate opening up the floodgates anytime soon, in large part because I am just an absolute psycho who refuses to compromise the quality of anything that I do. However, as you can see over here, lately, Josh has been leveling up as an operator. And so for the first time ever, proactively, we're kind of in a position where we're saying, hey, if you want to come work with us, you can, except that's not really true for the agency mentorship that we do because we artificially restrict that, just given how much time we spend with everyone. Anyway, if you're interested, I will leave the link down below. We're going to press ahead. I wanted to solve our conversion problem because it's super high leverage. For us, a client is worth over a 6-month time horizon, which is pretty typical for how long we will work with someone, even if they only anticipate kicking off for a month. A client will be worth between 30 and 100K. It's a pretty big variance, but you can imagine that if we don't change anything else about our funnel, but we eke out an incremental 5 points on our conversion rate, the dollars start getting really big. And we're not even operating at scale. I'm seeing that I left myself a little note here. If you are still early in your entrepreneurial journey, or you have a sort of mindset constraint, and you don't believe that you're capable of achieving this amount of money, first of all, I was the same way, so I totally get it. And here's another way to just think about why I might choose to invest 48 hours in building out my own version of Calendly. We're currently paying over $1,000 a month for Calendly, and our team is not even that big, and it's growing pretty rapidly. To that extent too, Calendly doesn't work for us. So we need to upgrade to an alternative. And I was pretty sure that we were going to use cal.com, in part because they brand themselves as being open source. And they are open source. However, if you go and look at their GitHub repo, you will notice something kind of annoying, which is that all the good features that realistically we need, which is why we're running into the Calendly ceiling, are only available on their enterprise plan. And I know open source is a spectrum. I just found myself pretty disappointed that they were on the boring side of that spectrum and most of their features are guarded. So if we did want to use cal.com, we would be paying $2,500 annually as we're currently structured. And if we grow in the way that I'm expecting we will over the next couple of months, as we start taking on more clients, that number is going to climb a little bit. With that being said, $4,500 is palatable. When we take on a client and they are worth 6 figures over 5 or 6 months, it means that we can absorb costs like that. And so with that being true, when I was deciding whether I wanted to consider embarking on this schizophrenic dev sprint, I began by trying to talk myself out of it more than anything else. There were 3 main considerations. What's the time cost going to be of building my own calendar solution? What is the ongoing maintenance going to entail? And is it going to be a time suck on that front? And what will the consequences look like if we grow, for better or worse? This was a question I was able to answer before I got started, because obviously if we have our own solution, it means that we're saving money. These 2 questions were a little bit of a black box for me. I didn't really know how I was going to maintain it because I didn't know what it was going to look like yet. I hadn't really started building it. And on top of that, I didn't know how long it was going to take to build this thing in the first place. The thing is, I was finding it so annoying to build around Calendly and retrofit our automations to work with their product that was just driving me a little crazy. And so given there was already time investment there, I was at least willing to explore whether this might be worth it. And I say explore because what I was kind of hoping for or expecting was that I was going to hit a wall. I was going to realize that dealing with time zones and Google Cal integrations and all this stuff was just too much of a nightmare. And it would just make sense to go use cal.com. We could pay the $5,000. I could sleep well at night knowing that, hey, at least we looked into it. And so that was my entry point. I started by trying to prove myself wrong. And so from there, my first step was jumping into Gemini 2.5 Pro, which I love because of the huge context window. And I explained, hey, I want to migrate from Calendly to cal.com in order to handle the scheduling for my educational offer. And then I went on to say a bunch of other stuff, blah, blah, blah. But really what I was just trying to do was have the model determine what it would look like if we did want to build this out ourselves against the counterfactual, which would just be going with cal.com. And I wasn't super deterred by the callouts that it made. Time zone hell felt like it was solvable. I mean, it is solvable, and it's a very known problem for which there are best practices. Availability logic, calendar integrations, some of this stuff at scale, if I were building in a way that was intended to accommodate users outside of our organization, would be kind of hellish. But that's the thing, I just needed a solution that would work for people inside of my Google organization. And so ultimately the model decided that I should just proceed with cal.com and build my own workarounds. Given that I'm almost positive the length of my telomeres has shortened, given how quickly I built this and how little sleep I got, maybe Gemini was right. But nonetheless, I had it put together a scope of work for building this myself so that I could take the document that Gemini created and hand it off to Cursor. This is a workflow that I will run all the time. I will think through a lot of the nuance associated with a project, and then I'll put together a PRD and then give that to Cursor. To be clear, this is not me putting together a thorough project roadmap. I might spend 2.5, 3 hours meticulously scoping out exactly what I need to build for a client project and defining the data structures and exploring different pieces of the tech stack and getting really nuanced. Again, not from a true technical perspective in the syntactical sense, but from an architectural standpoint in a way that I can understand now at this point. This is like the break glass in case of emergency project roadmap because I took too much meth and now it's time to vibe code. Okay, I hope I didn't lose you guys, but now we are at the starting point of actually building. So it's 12:30 on Wednesday night. I have my project roadmap. I pop that into Cursor. I was actually impressed given how little context I gave it, how well it just thought through the tech stack and the features that we were going to need to stand up. Honestly, the only thing that I cared about at this point was going to be how much of a pain in the ass it would be to integrate with Google, because that was the big hurdle that I anticipated from a time and maintenance cost. But honestly, this step came together way faster than I was expecting. I thought we would get stuck in GCP and we would go pencils down and that would be the end of it. However, after I created a service account in Google Cloud Provider, it just wasn't that hard. And keep in mind, it would be way more excruciating if I didn't have Cursor just telling me methodically exactly what I needed to do. So once that was configured, I basically reached a point where this wasn't quite what I had gotten to, but it was not that far off from a visual standpoint. However, all of my code, the logic that I cared about, was kind of messy. And it was also sitting in a single file for the most part. The directory was just a mess. However, as far as I was concerned, we had at least validated the concept enough that I was willing to push forward and invest a little more time in this. I hadn't fully made up my mind that we were going to go heads down, but for 2 hours of work, I was willing to invest another 2. And I know that might seem a little weird. It's like, Josh, why are you being so guarded about your time? But honestly, I'm so strapped for time. And as you guys will come to find, if you decide to go down this route as someone who isn't technical and kind of turn themselves into a person who can understand text that you can take on clients, what happens is that you become a bit of a weapon. This isn't me being like not humble, or I guess arrogant would be a better way to phrase that. It's just kind of a consequence of turning yourself into someone who has a ton of economic value to a lot of different types of people and businesses. Anyway, okay, so we needed to clean up our project. And this is a pretty simple project. So I had a good idea of what I wanted the architecture to look like. We were going to have a front end, which would be the pretty stuff that the user sees, a backend, which is where most of our hardened logic was going to live. And then we needed a database, and we needed to use Google Cloud as the external service provider that would tell us what was sitting on our calendar. If this makes even a little bit of sense, regardless of whether you've ever pushed a web app to production or not, guess what? You are able to work in tech in the year 2025 because the value is migrating. And don't get me started because I'll lose my train of thought. But if you are serious about maybe getting started, let me know. Okay, my Excalibur was glitchy. I had to clean up some arrows. So when someone is on our calendar, they're clicking through here and they're on our front end, and then it turns out there are no more questions after that last question. It's going to recognize that and recognize that it's time to show the time slots, and then make a request to the backend saying, hey, what times should I show on the calendar? The backend is then going to recognize that it was asked a question, and then it's going to use like a tool or a route to find the answer to that question. So it needs to know what times the user wants to make available, and then it needs to know what else is already on the user's calendar. So currently, we have Supabase already set up at this point in the project. Supabase, it's a Postgres DB. If you're coming from no-code land, it's the same thing as Airtable. It just isn't as friendly, and it doesn't have like the UI features and stuff. But a relational database is a relational database is a relational database. Anyway, in our database here, we have things set up in a particular way. So we haven't really talked about the DB yet, but effectively we are storing just some basic information that the user, i.e. me, wants. For instance, don't let people schedule meetings at 3 a.m., although 3 a.m. is basically just a normal working hour for me at this point. And then the other thing that we need is just an answer to the question, well, what is already on our calendar, so that we don't open up a bunch of slots that create conflicts. Now, once we have retrieved that information from Supabase and Google, then we can basically put it all back together, make sure that the front end gets the information that it needs, and it can go ahead and show us all of the times that are available on our calendar. And thank God I don't have any meetings tomorrow morning. Okay, so this was the first part of refactoring our code base. And keep in mind, just at this point, the code base is in a super manageable spot. Getting all this worked out wasn't really that hard. And now it was time to do some of the slightly more fun work, although working on UI components can start out fun and then become really hellish really quickly, depending on how many random libraries and containers we have like sitting around and whatever. I don't know what's happening here. I feel like all of my Excalibur arrows did a Toy Story and they all like left the window and then went and got drunk and like tried to put themselves back in the same spot but didn't get there. Okay, so within our front end, we needed to refactor the UI. As it existed before in a pre-refactor world, we basically had all of our different elements and logic and CSS kind of mashed into this one configurable booking file. And so what I did was pretty simple. I basically broke out certain sections of the code related to the different stages that we would take people through as they were in the process of booking a call, and I made those their own files. Now, theoretically, is this necessary? I mean, no, because a machine is just going to compile the code anyway and put it into kind of like one crazy whatever. It'll know what to do with the ones and zeros. But organizing our code makes life so much easier as we try and build new features and solve for little bugs and deal with the millions of random things that all of a sudden clients want once they realize what we're capable of doing. And so, yeah, I broke out some of the logic into different stages. And then for some of the components that we were reusing in multiple spots, like the calendar or the time zone selector, I basically just made those their own files too, so that everything was pretty modular. And I think this gives you a pretty good sense of how it all works when things come together. We have our parent component file, and then we have the stage child file, and then we have our UI elements. If this seems intuitive and just logically you kind of understand what this relationship looks like, guess what? There isn't much more to it. If you want to go down this road, it is an option for you whether or not you are technical. That's the through line through this whole video. And honestly, if you are not technical, sometimes I think that you're actually in a better position to make money doing this, because you're able to just think from a first principles standpoint about the actual needs that a business has, because maybe that's where your experience lies. If you're an ops manager for a logistics company and all you do is think about esoteric logic, this happens and then this happens and then I need this from this person, you're basically programming, you're just using plain English, and oh, guess what? Now we can use plain English in order to program. It's almost like everything is inside out, upside down, and all of human knowledge is getting commoditized and the models are going to eat us. Okay, that may or may not happen, but if it does come to pass, we might as well make a bunch of money before we do, because then maybe we'll be able to stave off the end of days for a little longer than the next guy. Okay, so at this point, I was not even 2 days in, and I had reached the point where the MVP didn't look bad. I was pleased with it. And it was clear to me that this was going to be worth investing in for the long run. I put that in air quotes because I knew it wasn't going to take me that much longer to finish this to the point where it was good enough that we could use it. But I wasn't exactly sure how long things were going to take from here, because the 80-20 rule is a very real thing. Getting to here is no problem. Even if you aren't thinking in as structured a way as I do about projects and your vibe coding, although I hate that term, the models are just so good nowadays that showing you something like this is a dime a dozen. If you wanted to jump into V0 and have it replicate this in a minute, like, it would do that. I was well aware that the hard part was going to be when someone in Paris books a time on someone's calendar who is not of a certain role in our organization and also has a meeting at that time, but that meeting was declined, and like, that's the stuff that matters in the sense that it needs to be accounted for, because it's equally as time consuming as like getting all the way here. Okay, so in our manic development journey, we are now at the 20-hour mark. And again, keep in mind that it's not like I was just working this entire time. I was on calls with people in the program and clients, and developers were working on our product test services. It was just kind of like every waking second that I had that I wasn't doing structural stuff was getting invested in this. And so now that I had the MVP that I was happy with, the code was in a good spot, it was structured in a way that was going to be maintainable and in a way that I could continue building it out, it was time to actually connect this puppy to the internet and take it for a spin. And what I mean by that is it was time to host this on a server so that other people could ping it. Okay, guys, we talked a little bit about how me investing my time is very important, and I worry that I might have had an aneurysm 45 minutes ago, and I haven't said a single word of cogent English since then. It's also 4:15 in the morning, so I think that what we are going to do is leave this video off here. I am going to go home and hopefully sleep for at least 6 hours. I would be so pleased with 6 hours of sleep. Please. And then if you guys found this even remotely interesting, I will continue to explain how we went from here all the way through to having, I didn't even show you guys the admin UI. Okay. I'll give you a little sneak peek. Okay, so here is the admin UI, and it is so unremarkable because it doesn't need to be. No one's going to see this other than us. all that we need to be able to do is come in here and quickly mark the availability that we want to show. I'll just select all. And then if we save this, we can come over here and all of our dates are going to change. Now you see we have a ton of dates available. Pretty handy, huh? Far and away though, the thing that is most handy about this is that we own it. And so we can fire webhooks whenever we want, and we can easily pass information in and out of all of the other places where we keep it, and we can set up our own analytics or do whatever we want in whatever way we want, in a way that will play nice with all of the other products that we use. At the end of the day, Calendly has a team of like 800 people, and I have to believe that 750 of those people are responsible for working on features that like 3% of their user base is actually using. And that's the secret to building these really powerful workflows in really efficient ways while still making them monetizable for consultant clients, for instance. When we are building these things for other people and helping them make additional money, just by empowering them to do the things that already make them money, they will compensate us at a rate that is commensurate. Going back to our example here of why building stuff like this is so valuable, if we take a look at our example where we create an incremental 2 points of conversion for a client that already has a 20% close rate and an average customer lifetime value of $3,500, the numbers become really meaningful, and we're not asking them to do or change anything about how they're operating. They already have a playbook that works. We're coming in and we're pouring gasoline on the fire, but guess what? We're not building something that needs to have some crazy caching algorithm or some really robust microservices because we have 100,000 daily active users with concurrent connections and like live WebSockets and all of these things. We are like assassins, just picking and choosing our spots, finding the points of pain and leverage that our clients are experiencing, and then selling solutions back to them that meet those needs in a one-to-one way. And again, if you're still in the camp where you have like a little bit of a limited mindset and the idea of making this amount of money is scary because there's a little bit of cognitive dissonance, maybe that's not even at all your circumstance and I'm just totally projecting because that's kind of where I started from. If nothing else, let's say they have a team of 30 people, we just saved them 15 grand. This is real. It is a real opportunity. And if you are interested in working together in order to seize on it, again, I only take on a handful of people. The way that I work is very methodical. We have a nose to tail system that we run people through, and we produce winners, honestly. That's kind of our thing. However, we produce like 7 winners a month because we only take on 7 people. Excuse me. I'm actively dying. Okay, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out and watching this video. Let me know if you want me to make a part 2. If nothing else, and this just lives in the annals of my hard drive, I have a feeling I'm gonna look back on the past few days with a smile because this was super fun. And until we see each other again, just get out there and build.